All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at a truly fascinating classical text that approaches the human condition not as some abstract philosophical puzzle, but literally as a medical diagnosis. It frames our deep-seated spiritual ignorance as an actual physical disease. It's a remarkable, really grounded way to think about why we struggle and how we might actually find a cure, using metaphors that are just incredibly visceral.
So why would sugar candy ever taste bitter? I mean, it sounds completely impossible, right? Sugar candy is literally the universal standard for sweetness. But as the source text points out, if a person is suffering from a specific medical condition, their sense of taste actually becomes completely inverted. This medical reality sets up the core metaphor we're going to be unpacking today, explaining exactly why things that are supposed to be good for us sometimes feel so incredibly difficult to swallow.
Let's move right into part 1, the diagnosis.
Before we can even talk about a cure, we have to understand exactly what's making us sick in the first place. According to the text, the absolute root of our illness is something called avidya, which translates to nescience, or a profound spiritual ignorance. But here is the surprising part. It's not just a lack of facts, it is an active disease. The text states that this ignorance completely distorts how we perceive spiritual truth. Normally, in a healthy condition, we are meant to relish absolute truth, beauty, and bliss. But when we are infected with avidya, our ability to taste that transcendental sweetness is entirely perverted.
And this brilliantly illustrates the text's central analogy. Think of physical jaundice. It's caused by biliary secretions, and one of its absolute strangest symptoms is that it actually makes a diseased person consider sweet things to taste very, very bitter. Well, the text argues that nescience, or avidya, is our spiritual jaundice. When a person is attacked by this material disease, they naturally take way more interest in a materialistic way of life. Suddenly, spiritual practice, which the text argues is inherently sweet, seems unappealing, super difficult, or even bitter.
Because we're operating with this completely distorted sense of taste, we look for relief in all the wrong places. The text introduces this concept of durashraya, which essentially means false or bad shelter. In our diseased state, we put all our faith in the material world, just hoping against hope. I mean, everyone is trying to become happy, but because of this underlying ignorance, our material attempts are constantly baffled. We can't understand our mistakes, so we just try to fix one mistake by making another. It's a futile, honestly exhausting struggle for existence.
Which brings us to part 2, the prescription.
So if we're stuck in this exhausting cycle of false shelters, what is the actual medicine? Well, the source material doesn't just give us vague advice. It presents a highly specific prescription. The cure is the careful daily chanting of Kṛṣṇa's holy names, specifically the Hare Kṛṣṇa Maha Mantra. According to the text, the holy name, character, and pastimes of Kṛṣṇa are transcendentally sweet, exactly like sugar candy. Taking this medicine means you regularly cultivate this chanting to gradually cleanse the mind and the heart of all those misconceptions.
Now, what's absolutely fascinating here is the exclusivity of the claim. The text states unequivocally, for jaundice, sugar candy is the only specific medicine. It argues that this consciousness is literally the single remedy for setting the confused world right. But hey, remember our paradox from earlier? To the diseased person, the sugar candy tastes bitter. The text totally acknowledges that this practice might not be palpable, or palatable rather, at first for someone deeply entrenched in materialistic life. But it insists that despite that initial bitter taste, the patient absolutely must take it with great care and attention, because it's the ultimate, root-destroying cure.
Let's look at how this actually plays out in part 3, the regimen and recovery. As we know, healing doesn't just happen overnight, and the text actually maps out 3 distinct stages in the recovery process. Stage 1 is the offensive stage, where a beginner first starts chanting and, generally commits a lot of basic offenses. But if the practitioner keeps going and avoids those pitfalls, they break through to stage 2, the stage of lessening offenses. Finally, by pushing through the lingering bitterness, they reach stage 3, the pure stage. Attaining this pure stage means the practitioner is immediately liberated from the blazing fire of material existence and can finally truly relish the taste of transcendental life. To actually progress through these stages, the sincere practitioner reaches what is called bhajana kriya. This is the stage of initiation and sincere execution of service, and it requires real commitment. The patient doesn't just take the medicine whenever they feel like it, they commit to a strict daily regimen. Specifically, the text mentions regularly chanting 16 rounds of the mantra daily. So it's a highly systematic, disciplined approach to spiritual recovery. But here's the catch.
Taking the medicine is really only half the battle. It only works if the patient also changes their lifestyle by clearing out what the text calls anarthas, which translates pretty simply to unwanted things. The logic here is brilliant, right? You can't cure a disease if you keep ingesting the exact toxins that made you sick in the first place. These anarthas are the worldly contaminations that absolutely must be vanquished as a person becomes attached to the spiritual process.
And the regimen is highly specific about clearing these anarthas out. The practitioner must entirely refrain from illicit sex, meat eating, wasting time in gambling, and they have to avoid all intoxicants. And yes, the text explicitly notes this includes even tea and coffee, which honestly might be the toughest pill to swallow for a lot of us. But by completely abandoning these deeply ingrained habits, the practitioner cleanses the mind and heart, which finally allows the sugar candy of the holy name to taste sweet.
Now for the final outcome in Part 4, the prognosis.
So what does total, vibrant health actually look like? Well, the patient arrives at a state called bhava, which is the preliminary awakening of dormant love of Godhead. And the shift here is truly remarkable. At this stage, the conditioned soul becomes completely free from the drag of material existence. The things that used to seem so incredibly important, material opulence, material knowledge, bodily conceptions of life, they all just fade away. The practitioner is fixed in their activities and experiences profound ecstasy in executing them. The spiritual jaundice is entirely cured. In this state of total health, the practitioner also gains perfect clarity. They can clearly recognize Maya, which is defined as illusion or the forgetfulness of Kṛṣṇa. This is the exact energy that previously kept them trapped in the material disease, blindly seeking out all those false shelters we talked about. Now, the illusion still exists out there in the world for sure, but once the bhava stage is reached, it can no longer disturb the devotee, simply because they can finally see it for exactly what it is. Notice how beautifully the metaphor transitions right here, shifting away from disease versus health to a really striking duality of light versus shadow. Light represents Kṛṣṇa consciousness, health, and sunshine. Shadow represents Maya, illusion, and darkness. The text explains that these two stand side by side. If you choose to remain in the shadow, you simply can't enjoy the light, but if you purposefully step into the light, you can no longer be disturbed by the darkness. This powerful verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita perfectly summarizes the text's ultimate promise. It says, Kṛṣṇa is compared to sunshine, and Maya is compared to darkness. Wherever there is sunshine, there cannot be darkness. It's that simple. By taking the medicine, completing the rigorous regimen, and fully stepping into the light of this spiritual practice, the darkness of illusion is said to vanish immediately. The patient doesn't even touch the darkness anymore.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a final thought. Think back to that concept of durashraya, the false shelter. We all have ways we try to fix our mistakes with just more mistakes. So, in your own pursuit of happiness, what false shelters might you be relying on today? Are you hoping against hope in areas of your life that might just be built on illusion? It's a fascinating lens through which to view our daily struggles, challenging us to look for a real cure that gets directly to the root of the issue.